Hey everybody, Michael Snyder, Pacific Northwest Weather Watch. Today is November 20th, and right now we're looking at the infrared satellite imagery. You see British Columbia, Washington, Oregon. Check out the storm out over the Gulf of Alaska. Atmospheric river into southeast Alaska. This will be sagging south across the region over the next few days, but it'll be weakening as it does so. We'll take a look at those details, and we'll take a look at the extended forecast as always as we go through the video here this morning. This is the GOES 18 satellite imagery. Got some dense fog across Willamette Valley, eastern Washington, Idaho Panhandle, western Montana, and you can see it infiltrated into the valleys there of eastern British Columbia. That's some mid and high level clouds that act as a blanket and reduce the radiational cooling through the overnight and early morning hours. It restricts that dense fog development here across a lot of the area. Nice sunset out there as well. And if you're not in that dense fog, you probably saw that pink hue to the sky as the sun is rising this morning. This is the dense fog advisory here down into the Willamette Valley and kind of creeping into western Washington a bit, but you can kind of see it mimics where those high and mid-level clouds were forming. And if you want a nice affordable home weather station, click on that link down below. It's always much more fun to watch the weather roll in when you've got one of these on your place of residence. Looking at last night's European run, you can see the frontal system off the coastline here is Vancouver Island. There's Washington, Oregon, and you can see the easterly component across the Cascades all the way up to the coastline there. Some gusty winds coming for the gorge, Stampede gap there as well, and all the way out towards the Washington coastline even. And you can see the frontal system make its way across Vancouver Island. You see the interesting wind shift here out of the north. Southerly winds there kind of marking that frontal boundary as it moves down across the area. And then you can see the north winds move all the way down the California coastline by the time you get towards Thursday morning. Now looking at the European, this is 6-hour precipitation amounts and type. And then you can see the frontal system is weakening by the time it gets down towards Washington. Some snow for the higher terrain, not too much here, but you can clearly see this decaying front as we go through Wednesday afternoon, pushes across the area and some Arctic air trying to get down across Montana, bring some snow to Idaho and on all the way on and through Wyoming as well. And this would be Thursday afternoon looking at that. That's the end of last night's European run. Now looking at accumulated 10-meter max wind gusts, I want to show you that it's going to be pretty gusty going through the gorge here and Stampede Gap. Typical locations out there, you're talking about, the North Bend area, maybe out towards Enumclaw a bit here, some gusty winds. There's also another gap here up in Snohomish County, and you can kind of see the gusty winds across the higher terrain of Oregon all the way down through southern Oregon and even out towards the coastline here. And then as the front approaches, we're going to get some more gusty winds. Nothing too crazy. It's just maybe up towards 40 miles per hour, mainly on the water areas along the immediate coastline of some of the Puget Sound, mainly north of Seattle here, according to the NAM 3KM. Now, looking at the European on the left, the GFS on the right, we looked at this at yesterday's video, and the European was much wetter than the GFS was. So let's see what last night brought us. Again, this is running 24-hour total precipitation. By the time we go towards Tuesday, late morning hours is going to start across Vancouver Island and eventually push down across western Washington on and through western Oregon as well. But you can clearly see it will be weakening as it does so. And the European calmed down with some of the amounts it was bringing to Seattle, but still fairly rainy here for Vancouver Island, some of the Olympic Mountains. And the GFS actually a bit rainier now for the Washington coastline here also. But you can see about 0.4 of an inch versus 0.2 of an inch here on the GFS for Seattle, and a little bit less here for Portland, according to both models. You can also see the pretty strong rain shadowing going on here for eastern Washington as this weak front moves across the area. This is Bellingham, about 0.4 of an inch there. Pretty good ensemble agreement. Seattle, 0.4 of an inch. And again, some of the European ensemble runs were showing higher amounts here. So we'll see how that unfolds, but nothing too crazy. Now looking at this is the GFS, looking at integrated vapor transport. This is the Gulf of Alaska here. You can see Washington is right there. So I put this into motion. You can see a fairly strong atmospheric river into southeast Alaska, but it's weakening rapidly as it moves across British Columbia. Barely qualifies even as an atmospheric river by the time it gets across Washington, and clearly falling apart as it moves across Oregon, shown there. And now here we're looking at the Washington coastline, and you can kind of see the cross-section of the atmospheric river. These are low-lying features here. And that'd be about 10,000 feet. So you can see the higher in the atmosphere you go, the less moisture there is. So that's why we get pretty dramatic rain shadowing events here with these atmospheric rivers, because you run into the Olympic Mountains and the coastal range, Vancouver Island down through Oregon. You really wring these systems out. And then you get to towards the Cascades, and there's not much left over for eastern Washington and eastern Oregon as these slam into our terrain features. So kind of a little rain shadow 101 there for the Pacific Northwest. This is looking at atmospheric river, and you can see it doesn't even really qualify for some areas of Vancouver Island, the Washington, Oregon coast, just barely for a weak atmospheric river here. So it's just based on duration and integrated vapor transport. over any given area. Now, looking at 24-hour Kucher ratio snowfall, this takes into account the lowest levels of the atmosphere, the temperature. So sometimes it's a little more accurate than the 10-to-1 snow ratio. But for the most part, you can see Snoqualmie really not getting much here. Stevens might get a little bit of snowfall here, but it really is just kind of calling for a rain-snow mix there. But once you get a little bit higher elevation, you might pick up a few inches here across some of the higher terrain. So heads up for that. Not a very snowy system either. Now, looking at a wider view of things, we got Japan to the far left. Here's Alaska. There's Washington. You can clearly see the ridge over us and the storm system over the Gulf of Alaska, and then we're going to get that decaying front moving across the area there. And then we've got some pretty strong ridging starting to show up here in the extended forecast. Look at that ridge all the way up across the Yukon, Alaska, Northwest Territories as well. Some troughing develops across some of the Southwest USA. And this has an El Nino look to it here. I mean, you're kind of bringing some additional troughing here, maybe enhanced by El Nino. I'll look into that more over the next few days, but you can kind of see this below average heights here at 18,000 feet out over the Pacific Ocean. Kind of got that El Nino flavor to it. But anyway, I'll look into that a little bit more today, and we'll try to get some, and as always, we'll break this down day by day to try to see what's going to happen here off through the extended forecast. But now looking at the GFS, this is that strong storm off over the Gulf of Alaska, and then again with the decaying front moving across us here, and then we're going to dry out for a bit. And then if we go far enough out, you can see the GFS start to bring another weak system towards Pacific Northwest here. But you can see there's a lot of cold air spilling down into the lower 48. We're going backwards here, and you can kind of see the Arctic air associated with this storm here. And as it pushes down, it might bring some snow for Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming here. As you can see, a pretty good pressure gradient with it as well. Is that a high pressure associated with the Arctic air pushes down mainly east of the Rockies there. And we're going to stay dry for a few days after this frontal system rolls through early to mid this week. And you can see this reflected here in the 6 to 10 day precipitation probability outlook. Big bullseye here across the Pacific Northwest for below average precipitation. It's a good thing we did pretty well precipitation wise across a lot of the area for the first half of November, because we're going to start to dry out a bit here. And you can see 6 to 10 day temperature probability outlook below average as we go through November 29th. This is Seattle. So we're at 5.36, and we're going to pick up, maybe 2 to 4 tenths of an inch more. And we're going to need it because we're going to dry out, like I mentioned. And look what we brought on the 19th, kind of a locally windy area out here across some of areas south of Seattle. And my house, the ultrasonic anemometer picked up 45 miles per hour. It's actually out on the coastline, so I missed the strongest wind gusts so far of the season. But you can see 43 at SeaTac, not too bad. Also SeaTac's strongest gust of the season so far. And yeah, interesting stuff. More on that here in a moment. But you can see November, we averaged about 6.31. So, I mean, it's feasible. We may even have a hard time getting towards that. And we're only about an inch away from it right now. So we're drying out here as we go through November. But here's the station at my house. And you can see the 3-cup anemometer picked up 42 miles per hour there. So yeah, interesting stuff. I'm going to go take a walk here this morning and see if there's any tree damage in the local park. You can see SeaTac there at 43 miles per hour. And kind of just local areas here. You can see Maple Valley did hit 48, and you can see the Tacoma Narrows at 42 here. Some gusty winds down toward Des Moines, maybe down towards Redondo, but Boeing Field hit 31. But yeah, kind of just this local area here as we had that southwest surge move through with that system. But anyway, yeah, we'll continue to watch this here. We'll see just how long we're going to remain dry. We'll keep looking at that extended forecast to see if things are going to change. And honestly, I'd rather get this break in November, and maybe we can get some more active weather here as we go through December on in through January. But yeah, things can change quickly. We'll just continue to monitor it for now. Hope you guys are having a good day. Enjoy that sunrise out there. Hopefully you guys got some pictures of it. Send it to me on Twitter out there, and I will talk to you. We'll do this again tomorrow, and I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.